But when we are now talking about a common currency, with the how do we strike the equilibrium when our economy is not at par?
Well, I think that I'm no economist, but what I know from practical experience is that what we are looking for is an average, a median.
Okay.
If you take the Francophone zone, where most of them they are all using CFA.
CFA, yeah.
You cannot compare the economy of Cote d'Ivoire to that of Guinea. Guinea is not a member, or Togo or Niger. But then there are certain levels that one can operate within.
Okay.
And what is the purpose for a common currency? It is to ensure that trade will be easier among our women, among our men who travel across the sub-region. So one is not looking for very strict variables. You are not saying that all the economies should be at the same level. It is not possible. Our resource base cannot be the same.
Okay.
But I believe that there's a common denominator which will make it possible for the convergence to allow a common currency.
Yeah, Your Excellency, how, like you said earlier that you are still a Pan-Africanist. Most Pan-Africanists are seen as a radical activist that most times, stand in opposition. Most times, stand in the opposition. How do you combine it? Being a Pan-Africanist, an activist, a radical, in quote, and someone who is now serving as a political appointee?
Well, you need to ask yourself, in opposition to what? I think when you are Pan-Africanist, all that you are arguing, and the conservatives in Europe are practicing it, is that our interests as a continent can only be realized if we pull our resources together. And today, the so-called conservatives who oppose Pan-Africanism or who oppose African unity or Union of Africa in one form or other are the strongest advocates, because the European Union has proven that the salvation of a people who find themselves in a common terrain, who can be classified as one people because of culture, because of geography, custom, and the rest must come together. And that's, when Nkrumah was talking about African unity, some said that it was an attempt to destabilize other countries. I remember when the European Union celebrated their 50th anniversary a year ago, they paid tribute to the pioneer rule of Nkrumah in promoting the same idea in Africa. But when he started, he was seen as a rabble-rouser, as a communist. But unity has nothing to do with ideology. Ghana and Nigeria, for instance, Ghana and Togo, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we have so much that unites us. So it's not being a socialist or a capitalist. What is important is that we are one people, our interests.
You are fighting for common goal.
Yeah, goal. We want our people travel across. So it's not ideology. It is common sense, and that common sense is what Europe is practicing today, to the extent that former so-called Soviet satellites have been allowed to join the European Union, because when they join, they increase the market potential, the resource potential of Europe. And why shouldn't be able to do that in Africa?
Now, Your Excellency, would you then, maybe as a way of advising some of the activists maybe watching this program, even outside Ghana, to also have a change of, perception about always standing against? Because I have seen a lot of them, whatever government that comes to power is not doing well. And the question is, if you ask them to go and do something, they will tell you, no, I'm not going into politics, I don't want to be part of it. How do we dare reconcile this?
Well, if I get it very well, there's always a difficulty about the decision to serve the public, because you are better off in most instances serving yourself and your family. But I believe that if you help to build a village, a community, you enhance your own happiness, your own security. If you are the richest person and all around you there is poverty, you cannot breathe an air of security. And so going to public service, I think if you are that ready and available and gifted, offers you a wider platform to serve humanity and mankind. And so for me, public service should be an attraction to everybody. As to whether governments may not perform well in their time, that's a more reason why we should all strive to serve, because you want to improve things. And so if you are sitting on the fence and you see all the mistakes and you don't want to get into the act, then you are not being of service to your society.
Sir, the African Union have a meeting. They come together, the heads of government, to form some policies that will affect the development of the continent. Are the ambassadors also coming together as a kind of having a forum where they interact on what goes on there, so that they can also advise the government at the home?
Well, are you talking about ambassador at the continental level or at the national level?
At the continental level or the regional level, before we talk about the...
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have something like that in place. Okay. But what I know is that in some countries, they have a club of ambassadors, former ambassadors, who try to impact foreign policy with the experience and insight from their times as ambassadors. So in many countries you have, I know that there's one in Nigeria, and sometimes they come together in initiatives that conduct research and publication.
But will that really help the continent if we have a means of bringing all the ambassadors together to also interact?
Well, it will take a lot of resources to achieve that. So the way out is to have national groupings, and then it will be easier then to network. But what I know is that the ECOWAS provides a forum for former ambassadors to be of continuous service to the sub-region. Some of them are in that capacity asked to join observer teams anytime there are elections. Some of them are asked to serve on several bodies of the ECOWAS. So that's, for me, is a beginning.
His Excellency Ambassador Kabra is my guest on Trailblazers Africa today. We're going to do another short break and we'll be back. I have no doubt in my mind that you are really enjoying your Saturday, and of course right here I'm equally doing the same, as I have His Excellency Ambassador Kabra in the house, looking at the role of diplomatic mission outside your own country. Your Excellency, let's take a look at the government of Africa. As an ambassador, while in Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire, you may have identified 1, 2, 3 areas that you want the government to, work on, to improve on, as an advice. What areas would you say each, each leader in Africa should try to work to bring about, peace, development, and a better relationship in the continent?
That's a tough one, but my response would be that governance should satisfy the expectations of the people. wherever we have seen some of these crises, the crises have been fueled by ethnicity, by marginalization, economic deprivation, and political exclusivity. So the first task is to recognize that in many of our countries, for all the countries, we live with the reality of ethnicity, different groups living in the same nation. Our policies should seek to unite and not divide. And then you look at the issue of economic well-being or welfare, deprivation, the gap between the rich and the poor, unemployment. Now, these negative variables become the fodder for all the crises that we have on our hand in Africa. And so the way out is to ensure that the national cake, as they put it, is spread across. That when it comes to development, it is spread across all the regions. If you look at Ghana and the Kwame Nkrumah, whose centenary we celebrated recently, he was a symbol or a fountain of unity. His advantage maybe was that he came from a minority tribe. And that meant that for him to be able to sustain his power base, he couldn't base it on a small group. He had to reach out. And his total view as a Pan-Africanist, where he saw Ghana as a home for, I mean, if he saw Ghana as a home for every African, then he couldn't deny or deprive Ghanaians of a share to the national cake. So you see that when it comes to education, he ensured that education was spread throughout the continent. When he came, he saw that the North from colonial times was behind the South, and he sought to address that divide or gap.
But some people, based on the several interviews that we have conducted, some people still believe that late Dr. Kwame Nkrumah did not give Ghana what is expected, that he was rather concerned with the continent of Africa and what have you. What would you say to that?
Well, which African leader today is not concerned about all Africa? I mean, I've been in the system, and I know what effort every African leader is putting into Africa. Otherwise, let's dissolve the AU and let's consider on our national interest. The point is that at independence, when Ghana became independent in 1957, there were only about 8 independent African states. Now, if today we are all happy that South Africa is free, and we are talking about an African World Cup, if the Nkrumahs had not invested in the liberation struggle, would we be celebrating South Africa now?
Not at all.
So I think that what Nkrumah did was for humanity. But beyond that point, there is every evidence to show that even in his own backyard Ghana, he invested a lot. That accounts for the appreciable educational landscape you have in Ghana. But above all, he kept Ghana a united country. Today in Ghana, there are cracks. Those cracks appeared after Nkrumah. So to judge Nkrumah, and that's been the pattern, is to say that he gave so much to Africa, forgetting that you need to give to your neighbor. You have to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that he lived a Christian principle. And Africa is better today because we had the Nkrumahs, the Nyereres, the Sekuturis, the Modibo Keitas, the Kaundas, and all the leaders of the First Nation, not forgetting Nigeria's founding fathers like Balewa, Azikwe, And Awolowo.
Yeah. You were a journalist, or are you still practicing?
Well, I'm for now concentrating on writing my memoirs and one or two books. But once a writer, always a writer. So when I finish with my current project of writing my memoirs, I will see what the future has for me as far as current politics is concerned in writing.
Would you say the journalists in the continent are doing enough in terms of developmental, reporting, in terms of contributing to, unity of the continent?
Well, Africa is so vast to be able to make a general assessment.
Your experience in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone.
Well, what I would say is that we have played our part in the past, and we are still doing our best. But what our journalists need to do is to look inside themselves and ask what are the challenges facing today's Africa, today's Ghana, today's Cote d'Ivoire, today's Sierra Leone, whatever country that one is talking about. And based on that, assess their own performance. I believe that there's still a lot that we can do to improve the good governance on the continent. I believe that there's too much politicization of journalism in Africa of today, to the extent that when you go to most of our countries and you take a newspaper, you can straight away tell where the paper stands. And of course, it is not a crime to have a political stance, but it's a question of fitting that stance into the objectivity and the ethics of the profession, where truth is truth and cannot be otherwise.
Your Excellency, don't you think that has to do with the ownership too? Because most of the newspaper, most of the media houses are being owned by those in power.
Well, that is a problem, but whatever I say, and that was my philosophy as a journalist, that I don't want to be a footnote to the ambitions of a politician. I want to be a main character in the history of my country. That means that you must uphold your independence, even when you all of us, like Ngugi Wationgo taught many years ago, every writer is in politics of a sort. And there's nothing wrong to be in politics. I mentioned Ngugi Wationgo from Kenya. We have Wole Soyinka, one of the best writers. He's very political, but he does his politics with a great sense of objectivity, and that, for me, is how we should operate.
Your Excellency, as an ambassador, government comes, government goes, but the system remains. If any government now decides to say, "Oh, Ambassador Kabra, you have done so well, we want to involve you in one or two things," will you be willing to pick any appointment again?
Well, as somebody said, when you reach that bridge, you cross it. But as I said, I've always believed that I was born to serve. But you must also serve within a system that you believe in. It is not enough for all kinds of conspirations to just accept positions. I think you must believe to extend in the philosophy of whoever is offering the appointment. Otherwise, you would accept the job and you will have problems.
Let's look at what your vision of an African continent is like. What is the vision that Ambassador Kabra has for Africa? The kind of Africa you would like to see, you would like to enjoy?
Well, I want to see an Africa where each country provides the basics for its people. I want to see an Africa where we can collectively, as a continent, realize our potential. All too often, and sadly enough, we have all the resources. Today there is crackdown in Guinea. Guinea is one of the richest countries in Africa. But look at what is happening to that part of the continent. I believe that Africa can only thrive within a democratic culture. And that is the lesson of Ghana. That's the lesson of Botswana and other countries which have accepted fully the tenets of democratic governance.
Well, it's been a very lovely moment with Ambassador Kabra Amihere, the former ambassador to Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire. What, apart from the books that you are writing, what other thing would you want to tell the youth out there to do?
To the youth of Africa, to the youth of Ghana, I think that I would like to say what President Obama said when he was in Ghana, that we can make the difference. The destiny of Africa is in our hands. And so we should prepare ourselves for that leadership role. In our today's world, money is an attraction. But I believe that there's a lot of dignity in a good name, and that they should seek their future welfare, opulence, or whatever they want to be by working hard. And I also believe that it is better right from today for every African child, African youth who wants to be part of the solution to have a goal and work towards that goal. I believe that all the great men that we mentioned reached the heights they reached because from the beginning they had set goals. There were ups and downs. There were moments that they thought that the world had fallen